The 30th Year, Chapter 1, The Fading Echo of a Memory. The morning of Sarah Miller's 30th birthday dawned bright and clear in Willow Creek, Vermont, a picture-perfect New England town. Eleanor Vance, now a cherished fixture at Pinecroft, had driven down from the Catskills for the celebration. Sarah, her daughter Clara's dearest friend, was like a surrogate grandchild to Eleanor, a vibrant young woman with a laugh that could light up a room. The party was a joyous affair at Sarah's charming farmhouse. Family, friends, balloons, a cake shaped like a camera, a nod to Sarah's passion for photography. As the evening wound down, Eleanor found herself in the kitchen, helping Sarah clear away dishes. Sarah, beaming, showed Eleanor a framed photo she had just received from her parents, Mark and Emily. It was a beautiful, slightly faded picture of Sarah as a newborn, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, cradled in Emily's arms. "Look at this, Eleanor," Sarah gushed. "Mom and Dad found it in an old box. I've never seen it before. It's so sweet." Eleanor smiled, picking up the frame. The baby in the photo was undeniably Sarah, the same tiny button nose, the delicate curve of her lips. But as Eleanor's gaze drifted to Emily, Sarah's mother, a subtle, almost imperceptible flicker of unease rippled through her. Emily, in the photo, looked exhausted but radiant, her dark hair damp with sweat, her eyes shining with new motherhood. Yet there was something off. Eleanor had known Emily for years, a vivacious woman with warm brown eyes and a distinctive mole just above her left eyebrow. But in the photo, Emily's eyes seemed a shade lighter, more hazel than brown, and the mole was conspicuously absent. Eleanor dismissed it as a trick of the light, an old photo's imperfections. After all, Emily had changed over 30 years. Later, as they talked, Sarah mentioned her parents' upcoming 30th wedding anniversary. "They're planning a big trip to Europe," Sarah said, "and Mom's been feeling a bit nostalgic. She even dug out her old photo albums from the hospital where I was born." Eleanor's historian's instinct, always attuned to details, perked up. "Oh, which hospital was that, dear?" "Lakeside General in Burlington," Sarah replied. "Mom says it was a bit of a chaotic night, a big snowstorm, lots of babies born at once, but everything turned out perfectly." Eleanor nodded, but that subtle unease persisted. The image of the newborn Sarah and the slightly off Emily from the photo continued to bother her. It was a fleeting echo of a memory, a whisper of a discrepancy her analytical mind couldn't quite reconcile. She had witnessed firsthand how easily family narratives could be mistaken, how deeply secrets could be buried. The Chronos lens had taught her that. The next day, before driving back to Pinecroft, Eleanor decided to make a detour. She had a research paper to finish, but her curiosity, once piqued, was hard to ignore. She found an old newspaper clipping about the snowstorm of 1995 that Sarah mentioned. A severe winter event that had indeed hit Vermont hard, causing widespread power outages and travel disruptions. She then, almost on a whim, searched for Lakeside General Hospital during that period. She found a few local news articles detailing the challenges faced by the hospital during the storm. They mentioned an unprecedented surge in births due to the weather and a temporary shortage of staff and resources. One article even mentioned a brief, unavoidable period of confusion in the maternity ward due to a power flicker, but assured readers that all measures were taken to ensure patient safety. Confusion in the maternity ward due to a power flicker. Eleanor's blood ran cold. The words resonated with a sudden, chilling clarity. The slightly off Emily in the photo, the surge in births, the chaos of a snowstorm, a power flicker. The fading echo of a memory was suddenly becoming sharper, more insistent. Eleanor had a terrible sinking premonition. A secret, perhaps unintentional, might lie buried in Sarah's past, and it might be far more devastating than anyone could imagine. The 30th year of Sarah's life was about to unveil a truth that would shake her world to its core. Chapter 2: The Hospital Shadow. Eleanor couldn't shake the premonition. The brief, unavoidable period of confusion at Lakeside General, combined with the subtle discrepancies in Emily's newborn photo, felt like a siren song to her investigative mind. She knew from experience that seemingly innocent details often concealed profound truths. She called Sarah. "Sarah, dear, do you still have those old hospital photos your mother found? The ones from Lakeside General?" "Oh, yes, Eleanor," Sarah replied, cheerfully. "Mom put them all in a digital album for me." "Why?" "Just a historical curiosity," Eleanor said carefully. "I'm working on a paper about local Vermont history, and that snowstorm of '95 was quite a significant event. I'm interested in how public institutions coped, hospitals particularly." Sarah, always generous, emailed the digital album to Eleanor that very evening. It was a trove of grainy, early digital photos, some clearly scanned from older prints. There were pictures of Emily in labor, exhausted but determined. Then photos of the maternity ward, busy nurses, other new mothers. And finally, a series of photos of Emily and Mark holding baby Sarah. Eleanor zoomed in on every detail. The distinctive mole above Emily's left eyebrow was present in all photos except the one Sarah had originally shown her, the framed photo of Emily holding the newborn. In that specific image, the mole was absent, and Emily's eyes were distinctly hazel, not the rich brown Eleanor knew so well. In all other photos taken of Emily, before and after Sarah's birth, the mole was clearly there, and her eyes were unmistakably brown. This was not a trick of the light. This was a different woman. Eleanor stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The woman holding baby Sarah in that one photo was not Emily. This meant her mind raced, connecting the dots with chilling precision. A chaotic night, a snowstorm, a surge in births, a power flicker, a brief period of confusion, and one photograph, supposedly of Emily, but actually of a different woman holding baby Sarah. The implications were staggering. Sarah, her beloved Sarah, might have been swapped at birth. Eleanor felt a wave of nausea. The idea was horrific, a nightmare scenario for any parent. She had to be absolutely certain. And if it were true, how would she break this to Sarah, to Emily and Mark, a family's entire foundation, built on 30 years of love and shared memories, would be shattered? She continued to examine the photos, looking for other clues. In one photo, taken just after the baby was placed in Emily's arms, the photo with the real Emily, there was a shot of a nurse placing a hospital wristband on the newborn. Eleanor zoomed in, pixelating the image to its blurry limit. The band was faint, but she could just make out a name, Miller S. She looked through other photos. In one taken moments later, a close-up of Sarah's tiny hand, the wristband was clearly visible. Miller S., her own family name. Eleanor took a deep breath. She needed to verify the hospital's procedures from 1995. She drove to Burlington, to Lakeside General Hospital. The building was modernized, but the records department, now digital, still housed old paper files. She requested the birth records for Sarah Miller, born in 1995. The clerk, efficient but harried, pulled up the digital file. Name: Sarah Miller. Date of birth: January 17th, 1995. Mother: Emily Miller. Father: Mark Miller. Attending physician: Dr. Anya Sharma. Time of birth: 11:47 p.m. Eleanor then, using her academic credentials, requested the birth records for all infants born on January 17th, 1995, during the snowstorm, specifically between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. The clerk frowned. "That's a lot of files, ma'am. We had a baby boom that night." "I understand," Eleanor said, maintaining her calm. "It's for a historical research project on the impact of the '95 storm on medical facilities. I need to cross-reference patient flow during critical events." Reluctantly, the clerk granted her access. Eleanor sat at a computer, poring over the digitized records. Name after name scrolled by. And then she saw it. Name: Elijah Reed. Date of birth: January 17th, 1995. Mother: Anna Reed. Father: David Reed. Attending physician: Dr. Anya Sharma. Time of birth: 11:55 p.m. Elijah Reed, born just 8 minutes after Sarah Miller. Same date, same attending physician. Eleanor's heart leaped into her throat. She found the Miller S. wristband photo again. And then she found another photo in Sarah's album. A wider shot of the maternity ward, showing a nurse walking away from Emily's bed, carrying a bundled infant towards another room. In the background, in an adjacent bassinet, was another infant, a small, blurry figure. The hospital's shadow was long and cold, concealing a devastating truth. Sarah had been swapped. The real Sarah Miller was someone else. And the baby who had been raised as Sarah Miller, the one Emily held in that one picture, the one with the Miller S wristband, that was Elijah Reed. The truth, hidden for 30 years, was now terrifyingly clear. Eleanor had to find Anna and David Reed, and she had to prepare herself for the agonizing task of telling Emily and Mark that the daughter they loved might not be theirs by blood. Chapter 3: The Ghost of a Mother. Eleanor left Lakeside General with a heavy heart. The sheer enormity of the discovery weighed on her. 30 years. A lifetime of memories, of love, of shared experiences, all built upon an accidental, catastrophic error. Her first priority was to find Anna and David Reed. She knew their names, the date and time of their child's birth, and the hospital. Using her extensive genealogical research skills, honed by the Pinecroft Mysteries, Eleanor began her search. Anna and David Reed were harder to locate than anticipated. They had moved several times in the past 3 decades. Eventually, Eleanor found a recent address for Anna Reed in Arizona. David Reed, she discovered through an obituary, had passed away a few years prior. Eleanor decided against a phone call. This was a revelation that required a personal, delicate touch. She flew to Arizona, the midwife's journal and the Chronos lens providing a strange, almost comforting presence in her carry-on, reminding her of the power of truth to heal, even when it hurt. Anna Reed lived in a quiet, modest home in a sun-drenched desert town. She was a woman in her late 50s, with kind, tired eyes and a gentle demeanor. Eleanor introduced herself as a historical researcher, explaining her work on the 1995 snowstorm and its impact on Lakeside General Hospital. Anna, initially wary, slowly opened up, recalling the chaos of that night. "It was quite a storm," Anna mused. "We were so grateful to even make it to the hospital. My son, Elijah, he was born amidst all the commotion, a tiny thing, but so strong." Eleanor's heart ached. This was her moment. She carefully, compassionately explained her findings. The old newspaper article about the confusion in the maternity ward. The photos of Emily Miller and baby Sarah. The subtle inconsistencies. The birth records. The name Elijah Reed. Anna listened, her face slowly draining of color. Her eyes, initially confused, began to widen with a dawning horror. "Are you saying," Anna whispered, her voice barely audible, "are you saying my son, Elijah, was swapped?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "I believe there was an unintentional mix-up, Anna. On that night, amidst the chaos of the storm and the power flicker, it appears the babies were swapped. Your son, Elijah, was given to Emily and Mark Miller. And the Miller's biological daughter, who I believe was named Sarah, was given to you and David." Anna's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But Elijah, my Elijah, he's grown up. He's 30. He's wonderful. He's my son. We've always been so close. And so is Sarah to Emily and Mark," Eleanor said gently. "This is not about replacing anyone, Anna. It's about understanding, about knowing the truth of your own family history, and about giving everyone involved the chance to reconcile with it if they choose." Anna then revealed a haunting detail. "When Elijah was about a year old, I found a hospital blanket tucked away in an old box. It was embroidered with a tiny blue M. I always thought it was strange, since our name is Reed, but I dismissed it, said it must have been a generic hospital blanket, but a blue M for Miller." Her voice was thick with emotion, the ghost of a maternal instinct, a faint, forgotten whisper, finally making terrible sense. Eleanor showed Anna the photo of baby Sarah with the Miller S wristband, and the photo of Emily holding the baby that was actually Elijah. Anna stared at them, her tears falling onto the photographs. "My son," she sobbed, "my son was raised by someone else. And the daughter I had, the girl I raised, she was someone else's. My Sarah, my beautiful Sarah." The gravity of the situation was immense. Anna needed time to process this. Eleanor offered her support, her experience, and her unwavering belief in the truth. She left Anna's house that day with a profound sense of sadness, but also with a quiet determination. The ghost of a mother, Anna, had just realized her biological child had been taken from her decades ago. The harder conversation with Emily and Mark still lay ahead, and that, Eleanor knew, would be the most difficult reckoning of all. Chapter 4. The Shattered Mirror. The drive back to Vermont was agonizing. Eleanor rehearsed the conversation in her mind, over and over, trying to find the gentlest way to deliver the shattering news. There was no easy way. This wasn't just a revelation, it was a detonation. She arrived at Pinecroft, but found no peace there. The weight of Sarah's impending heartbreak and Emily and Mark's anguish was unbearable. She knew she couldn't delay. She called Emily. "Emily, I need to talk to you and Mark. It's important. Very important. Can I come by tomorrow morning?" Emily, sensing the gravity in Eleanor's voice, agreed. The next morning, Eleanor drove to Sarah's farmhouse. Mark and Emily greeted her with warm smiles, oblivious to the storm about to break. They offered her coffee, spoke of Sarah's party, their upcoming trip. Eleanor, her stomach churning, sat at their kitchen table, the framed photo of baby Sarah still on the counter, a silent, cruel irony. Eleanor took a deep breath. "Emily, Mark, I've been doing some research related to the 1995 snowstorm and Lakeside General. I found some inconsistencies, and I think you need to know. She began, slowly, carefully, with the power flicker, the chaos in the maternity ward, the brief period of confusion. She then showed them the old photo Sarah had found, the one with the wrong Emily holding baby Sarah. She showed them the clear photos of Emily, with her distinct mole and brown eyes, before and after the birth, confirming the discrepancy. Emily's smile slowly faded. Mark's jovial expression hardened into a frown of confusion. "Eleanor, what are you saying?" Emily asked, her voice tight with a rising apprehension. Eleanor placed the printed birth records on the table. Sarah Miller, born at 11:47 p.m. Elijah Reed, born at 11:55 p.m. Same doctor, same night. "I believe," Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly, "that on that chaotic night, amidst the storm and the power outages, there was an accidental, tragic mix-up. I believe the baby you were given, the baby you raised as Sarah, was not your biological daughter." Silence. A profound, deafening silence filled the kitchen. Emily and Mark stared at her, their faces pale with shock. Then Emily's voice, a raw, strangled cry. "No, no, Eleanor, that's impossible. Sarah is our daughter. She's our Sarah." "I know it's unimaginable, Emily," Eleanor said, her voice filled with compassion. "But I have found evidence. I found the biological mother of the baby you raised. Her name is Anna Reed. She lives in Arizona. And she too raised a daughter. A girl she believes is hers, who I believe is your biological child." Mark, always the more stoic, slammed his fist on the table, a sudden outburst of raw pain. "This is insane! You're insane, Eleanor! How dare you come into our home and tell us such a monstrous lie?" "It's not a lie, Mark," Eleanor insisted, her eyes pleading. "I have researched this meticulously. I have the records. I have spoken to Anna. She recalls finding a hospital blanket with an M on it. She recalls strange details from that night." Emily burst into tears, her body shaking with sobs. "My baby, my Sarah, you're saying she's not mine? After 30 years? How can you say such a thing?" Eleanor held up the photo of the baby with the Miller S wristband. "This wristband, Emily, is what they placed on the baby you were given. But it seems the baby wearing this wristband was Elijah Reed, not your Sarah." She then showed them the comparison of Emily's mole and eye color in various photos. The evidence was overwhelming. The shattered mirror of their reality reflected a horrifying truth. Emily and Mark were faced with the devastating possibility that the daughter they loved and cherished, the daughter they had raised for 30 years, was not their own flesh and blood. The foundations of their family, solid for 3 decades, crumbled before their eyes, leaving behind only the agonizing fragments of a profound, unimaginable loss. The reckoning for Emily and Mark had begun, a painful truth that would redefine their understanding of family, love, and identity. Chapter 5. The DNA Test and the Unraveling. The initial shock and denial gave way to a chilling, agonizing silence. Emily and Mark were visibly devastated, their world thrown into chaos by Eleanor's revelation. Mark, typically composed, paced the room, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. Emily sat, head in her hands, her sobs echoing in the quiet kitchen. "We need proof, Eleanor," Mark finally said, his voice strained but firm. "Absolute, undeniable proof. A DNA test." Eleanor nodded, her heart aching for them. "Of course. It's the only way to be certain. I've already spoken to Anna Reed. She is willing to undergo DNA testing, and she believes her daughter, Sarah, would also be willing to participate." Once she understands the gravity of the situation, they agreed to have a DNA test done for Emily, Mark, and Sarah. The process was agonizing, filled with a torturous blend of hope and dread. Sarah, when first approached, was confused, then deeply upset. "What do you mean I might not be your daughter? This is crazy," she had cried, tears streaming down her face. But seeing her parents' profound distress and hearing Eleanor's calm, logical explanation, she reluctantly agreed to the test. The weeks that followed were a blur of unbearable waiting. The tension in the Miller household was palpable, thick with unspoken fears and the ghosts of 1,000 what-ifs. Eleanor remained a steady presence, offering comfort and practical advice, helping them navigate the emotional wreckage. Finally, the results arrived. A thick envelope, bearing the logo of a reputable DNA testing lab. Mark, his hands trembling, opened it. He scanned the document, his face paling further. Then he handed it to Emily. She read it, her eyes widening, a guttural sob escaping her lips. Eleanor watched them, her own heart aching. She already knew the answer. The results confirmed it. Sarah, the daughter Mark and Emily had raised for 30 years, was not biologically theirs. Her DNA matched Anna and David Reed, and the biological daughter of Emily and Mark Miller was indeed the Sarah raised by Anna and David Reed in Arizona. The world shattered. The foundation of their lives, their identity, their family, crumbled into dust. Emily and Mark were inconsolable. 30 years of unconditional love, of shared laughter and tears, suddenly viewed through the lens of a devastating error. It didn't negate their love for Sarah, but it added a layer of profound grief, a sense of having lost something they never knew they had lost. Sarah herself was reeling. The news hit her like a physical blow. "So I'm not a Miller?" she whispered, her voice raw. "My whole life? It's a lie?" "No, darling," Emily sobbed, embracing her fiercely. "No, you are our daughter. You will always be our daughter. Blood doesn't define love, but this changes everything." The unraveling had begun. Sarah had to reconcile with the fact that her biological parents were Anna and David Reed, that her father had passed away, and that she had an unknown biological mother and family in Arizona. Emily and Mark had to come to terms with the existence of their biological daughter, a woman named Sarah living hundreds of miles away, who was a stranger to them. And Anna Reed now had confirmation of her own biological daughter, the Sarah who had been raised by the Millers. The DNA test provided the irrefutable proof, but it offered little solace. It nearly confirmed the depth of the void. The families now faced the daunting task of navigating this new, agonizing reality. The unraveled truth had just begun its long, painful journey of reshaping their lives. Chapter 6. 2 Daughters, a Shared Grief. The days and weeks following the DNA confirmation were a period of intense emotional upheaval for all involved. Sarah, the daughter raised by Emily and Mark, was struggling immensely. Her identity, once so solid, felt fractured. She felt a profound sense of loss for the biological family she never knew, particularly her biological father, David Reed, who had passed away. Simultaneously, she grappled with complex feelings towards Emily and Mark, who, despite their loving care, had unknowingly kept this truth from her for 30 years. It's like looking into a funhouse mirror. Sarah confessed to Eleanor, tears streaming down her face. "Everything I thought I knew about myself, about where I came from, it's all distorted. I love Mom and Dad, I do, but there's this emptiness, a void where my real history should be. Emily and Mark were equally heartbroken. Their love for Sarah remained unwavering, fierce even, but a new, aching space opened in their hearts for the biological daughter they had unknowingly lost. They felt a profound sense of injustice, a stolen past. Eleanor, recognizing the depth of their collective pain, acted as a compassionate mediator. She facilitated the first conversation between Emily, Mark, and Anna Reed. It was a tearful, hesitant exchange, filled with apologies, explanations, and shared grief. Anna, too, was grappling with the shock, mourning the life she never had with her biological daughter, even as she cherished Elijah. The idea of meeting their biological children, the other Sarah and Elijah, was daunting. Emily and Mark, cautiously, agreed to exchange photos and basic information. They learned that Anna and David Reed's biological daughter, also named Sarah, a common name, adding another layer of cruel irony, was a sweet, introverted woman who worked as a librarian in Phoenix. Elijah, their own biological son, was a gregarious graphic designer, a stark contrast to his introverted biological sister. The two Sarahs spoke first. A hesitant video call arranged by Eleanor. It was an awkward, emotional conversation. They shared birth dates, common interests, both loved to read, and the bizarre, surreal feeling of finding a biological sister after 30 years under such devastating circumstances. They discovered startling similarities in their mannerisms and expressions, uncanny parallels that hinted at a shared genetic heritage. The first in-person meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a quiet lakeside restaurant, chosen by Eleanor for its serene atmosphere. Emmy and Mark met their biological daughter, Sarah Reed. It was a moment of profound, almost unbearable emotion. Sarah Reed, polite but reserved, looked strikingly like Emily. Her eyes, her smile, the way she tilted her head. It was Emily's youth staring back at her. Mark, overwhelmed, simply embraced her, tears streaming down his face. "My daughter," he whispered, a lifetime of longing in those two words. Simultaneously, Anna Reed met Elijah, the biological son she had raised, and her biological daughter, Sarah Miller. The complexity of the emotions was overwhelming. Anna embraced Sarah Miller, a bittersweet reunion with the daughter who was genetically hers but had been raised by another family. Elijah, ever easygoing, tried to lighten the mood, but even he was visibly shaken by the revelations. There was no instant family reunion, no sudden embrace of new parents. This was a process of grief, adjustment, and tentative exploration. The love Emily and Mark had for Sarah Miller remained. The love Anna Reed had for Elijah remained. This wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about expanding the definition of family, acknowledging biological ties, and navigating the profound emotional landscape of a truth unveiled after 30 years. The two families, linked by this devastating twist of fate, began a cautious dance of connection. Shared meals, hesitant phone calls, attempts to build bridges across the vast chasm of lost time. The initial shock began to recede, replaced by a deep, shared grief for the past that could not be changed, and a tentative hope for a future that could be built, brick by painful brick, on the foundation of honesty and understanding. The two daughters, both named Sarah, both grappling with a stolen identity, began their shared journey of reconciliation, a journey rooted in a bewildering twist of fate and guided by the compassionate hand of Eleanor, the scholar of hidden truths. Chapter 7: Forging New Bonds. the path to healing and acceptance was long and winding, filled with emotional landmines. There were no quick fixes for a trauma as profound as a child swap. Eleanor, now a steadfast presence in both families' lives, continued to offer guidance, wisdom, and a compassionate ear. The two Sarahs, Sarah Miller, raised by Emily and Mark, and Sarah Reed, Emily and Mark's biological daughter, raised by Anna and David, slowly began to forge a unique bond. They were, in essence, sisters by biology and sisters by a shared traumatic experience. They spent hours on video calls, sharing their childhood memories, comparing notes on their personalities, finding uncanny similarities that went beyond mere coincidence. They even discovered a shared love for a particular obscure British author. "It's like finding a missing piece of yourself," Sarah Miller confessed to her biological sister. "Like suddenly understanding why certain things about me were just me." Emily and Mark, while still grieving the lost years with their biological daughter, dedicated themselves to nurturing their relationships with both Sarahs. They continued to pour love into Sarah Miller, affirming her place as their beloved daughter. Simultaneously, they cautiously built a connection with Sarah Reed, learning about her life, her passions, her quiet personality. It was a complex dance of acknowledging biological ties while honoring the profound bonds of upbringing. Emily found a surprising kinship with Sarah Reed, seeing so much of her younger self in the quiet librarian. Anna Reed, too, embraced this new, complex family dynamic. She remained deeply connected to Elijah, the son she had raised, while slowly building a relationship with Sarah Miller, her biological daughter. It was an exercise in unconditional love, stretching the boundaries of what family truly meant. Eleanor, observing this painful, beautiful process, noted the profound lessons emerging from the chaos. It highlighted that love, truly, was not solely about blood. It was about shared experiences, nurturing, sacrifice, and the choice to commit to another human being. But it also underscored the deep, often unconscious yearning for biological connection, the silent whispers of ancestry that could profoundly impact one's sense of self. The families also sought legal counsel, understanding the legal implications of a birth swap. While the statute of limitations for any legal action against the hospital had long passed, the hospital leadership, deeply apologetic, offered comprehensive support, therapy, counseling, and a commitment to reviewing their old procedures to prevent future occurrences. They also offered to facilitate access to any historical records that might provide further solace. Emily and Mark decided to use their planned European trip not as a honeymoon, but as a journey of reflection and healing, with both Sarahs joining them for part of the journey. It was a symbolic act of forging new bonds, creating shared memories that transcended the pain of the past. The trip was a mix of laughter and tears, awkward silences and heartfelt conversations, a raw but honest attempt to build a new family fabric. As months turned into a year, the initial shock began to subside, replaced by a fragile yet enduring peace. The families were not normal in the traditional sense, but they were adapting, finding their unique rhythm. Sarah Miller began to explore her biological roots, visiting Anna Reed in Arizona, learning about her biological father, David. Sarah Reed, in turn, traveled to Vermont, spending time with Emily and Mark, learning about the family she was genetically born into. Eleanor, observing from Pinecroft, saw the profound transformation. The devastating secret, once a source of unbearable pain, had become a catalyst for an unexpected expansion of family, a deeper understanding of love, and a powerful testament to human resilience. The 30th year, which began with a shattering revelation, had become a year of courageous healing, of forging new bonds, and of rewriting the narrative of what it meant to be family. The truth, though painful, had ultimately set them free, allowing for a deeper, more expansive form of love to flourish. Chapter 8: A Tapestry of Love. Years passed. The initial raw wounds of the revelation at Lakeside General Hospital began to heal, replaced by a complex, yet beautiful, tapestry of interwoven lives. Eleanor Vance, now well into her 70s, remained a beloved, wise elder figure, a silent guardian of the truth she had uncovered. Her book, The 30th Year, a story of identity, love, and a stolen past, became a poignant and insightful account of the birth swap, offering solace and understanding to countless families who had experienced similar, though perhaps less dramatic, upheavals. The Miller and Reed families, once strangers linked by a devastating error, had forged a unique and enduring bond. Sarah Miller, the daughter raised by Emily and Mark, pursued her passion for photography, opening a small studio in Willow Creek. She remained fiercely devoted to Emily and Mark, calling them Mom and Dad without hesitation. Her relationship with Anna Reed, her biological mother, blossomed into a loving, respectful connection. She visited Anna often in Arizona, building a deep understanding of her biological roots and the quiet life her biological father, David, had led. She found a profound sense of self in embracing both sides of her lineage. Sarah Reed, Emily and Mark's biological daughter, continued her work as a librarian in Phoenix, but her life had expanded dramatically. She regularly visited Vermont, spending holidays and extended periods with Emily and Mark. She found an unexpected joy in connecting with her biological parents, recognizing traits and mannerisms that resonated deeply within her. Emily and Mark cherished these visits, relishing the chance to witness their biological daughter's life unfold. Sarah Reed also formed a strong sisterly bond with Elijah, the son Anna had raised, a testament to the enduring power of family, regardless of blood. Elijah, always the gregarious one, embraced the expanded family with enthusiasm. He found new aunts, uncles, and cousins in the Miller family, and delighted in the complexities of his unique heritage. He often joked about having two moms, always with a deep affection for both Anna and Emily. The families celebrated holidays together, alternating between Vermont and Arizona. They shared milestones, supported each other through challenges, and continued to navigate the subtle nuances of their unique family structure. It wasn't without its difficulties, moments of lingering grief, questions about what if, and the occasional awkwardness still arose. But they faced them with honesty, open communication, and an unwavering commitment to love. Emily and Mark, their 30th wedding anniversary, long past, found a new depth in their own relationship, forged in the crucible of their shared heartache and the courageous process of acceptance. Their love for Sarah Miller remained the steadfast center of their world. But now, it expanded to embrace Sarah Reed, their biological daughter, and Anna Reed, the woman who had unknowingly raised their child. Eleanor, reflecting on the journey she had set in motion with a simple observation, often visited Emily and Mark and Sarah Miller. She saw a love that had defied convention, a family that had been broken and then rebuilt, not into its original form, but into something richer, more resilient, and more expansive. The fading echo of a memory had become a vibrant, living testament to the human capacity for forgiveness, understanding, and the boundless nature of the heart. the old hospital in Burlington, Lakeside General, became a site of historical interest, a reminder of the fragility of human systems and the profound impact of mistakes. Its updated procedures and ongoing support for the affected families became a quiet legacy of the incident. Eleanor, at Pinecroft, continued to write, to research, to explore the hidden stories that lay beneath the surface of everyday life. The Chronos lens, sitting proudly on her desk, was a constant reminder of the unexpected paths truth could take. The 30th year had not only marked a moment of shattering revelation for a family, it had initiated a profound journey of rediscovery, proving that even the most devastating truths could, with time and immense courage, lead to a tapestry of love, more intricate, more compassionate, and ultimately more beautiful than anyone could have ever imagined.